alone. But his grandma had a saying, "When you hear trouble, don't hide your heart. Bring it with you." Rio swallowed. His throat felt dry. He had heard the heavy steps again last night, far away like thunder that refused to leave. The village elders said it was a storm spirit, or a broken mountain, or a legend waking up. Rio did not know what it was. He only knew the jungle animals were scared. Then the ground gave a slow, deep tremble. Rio's knees bent by accident. He gripped the railing, and out of the green shade, something enormous appeared. It was shaped like a giant lizard, taller than the trees, with rough skin that looked like old stone. Along its back rose jagged plates, like a crown made of dark leaves and rock. It moved carefully, but every step still made the earth sigh. Rio's mind tried to run away from what his eyes were seeing. Godzilla? Rio whispered the name because his grandma had once told him stories from old movies she watched as a child. She called the creature the Big Lonely One. In her stories, Godzilla was not evil. He was just too big, too strong, and too misunderstood. But seeing him here, in real life, made Rio's hands feel numb. Godzilla lowered his head toward a river bend. He dipped his mouth into the water and drank, slow and quiet, like a tired traveler. Fish scattered. Ripples ran like frightened circles. Rio leaned forward, unable to look away. And then he saw another movement, small and quick, on a vine above the river. A monkey, not just any monkey. This one had golden brown fur, a pale face, and eyes that looked too thoughtful for such a small body. It clung to the vine with both hands and stared down at the giant creature. The monkey's tail curled tight, then loosened. It was scared. But it did not run. Rio recognized it. The village kids had nicknamed this monkey Momo because it made a soft momo sound when it begged for fruit. Momo was known for stealing bananas and then sharing them with younger monkeys. Once Momo had even tugged Rio's shoelace to stop him from stepping near a snake. Momo was brave in a strange, gentle way. Rio watched Momo creep along the vine, closer to the river. Godzilla lifted his head suddenly. Rio's heart jumped. Godzilla's eyes, huge and dark, turned toward the vine. Momo froze, hanging upside down now, one hand gripping the vine, the other pressed to its chest like it was trying to keep its tiny heart from falling out. Time stretched like a long rubber band. Rio expected the worst, but Godzilla did not roar. He did not snap. He did not chase. He just stared. Then, very slowly, Godzilla blinked, once, twice, and lowered his head again, as if to say, "I see you. I'm not hunting you." Momo's shoulders dropped a little bit. It let out a shaky breath. Rio felt his own breath return, and that was when the first twist happened. Momo reached into its cheek pouch, pulled out a small green fruit, and tossed it toward Godzilla. The fruit bounced off Godzilla's nose like a tiny pebble hitting a boulder. Rio covered his mouth. He almost laughed from nerves. Godzilla lifted his head again. His nostrils flared as he smelled the fruit. Then his eyes softened in a way Rio could not explain with logic. It was like the giant creature was surprised by kindness. Godzilla carefully lowered one clawed hand and pinched the fruit between two massive claws, trying not to crush it. The movement was so slow and careful that Rio's chest tightened. Godzilla brought the fruit closer. He sniffed it again, then he did something that made Rio's eyes sting. Godzilla held the fruit out, not to Momo, but to the river's edge where smaller animals were hiding. Like an offering back, a capybara stepped out first, trembling, then a deer, then a small bird hopped closer. No one took the fruit. They were too afraid. Momo chattered from the vine, soft and pleading, like it was saying, "It's okay. He's trying." The capybara finally approached, sniffed the fruit, and took a tiny bite. Nothing bad happened. The deer nibbled next. The bird pecked, and then the capybara pushed the fruit back toward Godzilla's claws. Godzilla lifted it and ate it with one gentle crunch. Rio let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Kindness had landed on a giant nose, and the world had not ended. But the jungle was still shaking, and the danger was not gone, because behind Rio, from the direction of the village, came another sound. A human sound, metal engines, and voices shouting. Rio turned his head fast, binoculars swinging. On the dirt road that cut through the trees, a convoy of trucks rolled forward. Men in bright helmets sat on top. A crane arm bounced with each bump. A loudspeaker crackled. Rio's stomach dropped. They had come. The company men, they wore patches that said Harbor Ridge Development. They had been trying for months to clear more forest, to build a road and a dock. The village had argued. Rio's grandma had begged them to stop. The animals had nowhere else to go. And now, with a giant creature in the jungle, Rio knew what those men would think. Problem, target, something to remove. Rio's hands went cold. Momo saw the trucks too. The monkey's ears flicked back. It looked from the convoy to Godzilla and back again, eyes wide. Godzilla, still near the river, tilted his head. He did not understand machines, but he understood threats. His backplates rose slightly, like bristles on a frightened cat. Rio's mind raced. If the men saw Godzilla, they might panic. They might try to attack. If Godzilla felt threatened, he might react. And if Godzilla reacted, the jungle and the village could be crushed in seconds. Rio's throat tightened with fear, but a stronger feeling rose under it. Responsibility. He remembered his grandma's words again, steady as a drum. Bring your heart with you. Rio climbed down from the platform and ran, feet slipping on wet roots. He did not run toward the village. He ran toward the river. He ran toward the giant creature. He ran toward the monkey. And he hoped the jungle would forgive him for being small. When Rio reached the riverbank, he stayed behind a thick bush and peeked out. Godzilla was still there, and Momo was still on the vine. The convoy noise grew louder, closer. Rio searched for a way to help. Then he saw something half buried, near the water, a piece of bright orange fabric. It was one of the warning flags the company had placed on trees. Rio picked it up and looked around. Momo dropped from the vine to a branch lower down, then to the ground. It landed softly and stared at Rio. Rio whispered, "Momo, listen. We have to keep them from seeing him." Momo cocked its head. Rio pointed toward the road, then toward Godzilla, then made a shooing motion toward deeper jungle. Momo made a small sound, like a question. Rio did not have time for perfect plans. He only had time for a brave mess. He waved the orange fabric in the air and stepped out of the bush. Momo's eyes widened. It looked like it wanted to grab Rio and drag him back into hiding, but Rio stood in the open anyway. Godzilla's massive head turned toward Rio. Rio's legs shook, but he raised one hand, palm out, the way his grandma did when calming a frightened goat. "Hey," Rio said softly. "It's okay, please. Please don't be scared." Godzilla stared. Rio had no idea if the creature understood words, so he tried something else. He crouched down and slowly placed the orange fabric on the ground, like an offering. Then he slid a banana from his backpack next to it. His grandma had packed it for him, thinking he would be at school. Rio hoped she would forgive him for using it like this. Momo's nose twitched at the banana. It took one step forward, then stopped, looking at Godzilla as if asking permission. Godzilla did not move. Rio pushed the banana a little closer with 2 fingers. Momo rushed in, snatched the banana, and then did not eat it. Instead, Momo carried it toward Godzilla. Rio's eyes went wide. Momo held the banana up with both hands, arms shaking under its weight. Godzilla lowered one claw and gently took it. The banana looked like a tiny yellow smile in Godzilla's huge hand. Godzilla sniffed it, then he peeled it. Not perfectly, not like a human, but with a careful scrape of his claw. The peel fell away in strips. Rio's mouth fell open. Momo made a pleased sound, like it had just seen a magic trick. Godzilla ate the banana and looked at Momo again. Then, slowly, he lowered his head toward the monkey and exhaled. The breath was warm and smelled like river stones and old rain. Momo's fur fluttered in the wind of it, and Momo did something so surprising that Rio forgot to be scared. Momo reached out and patted Godzilla's nose, just one soft tap. Godzilla didn't flinch. He stayed still, like a mountain choosing to be gentle. Rio felt his eyes sting again. He blinked hard. Then the trucks rounded the bend. Not a creature to protect, a thing to use. Rio looked toward the jungle where Godzilla had gone. He imagined the men chasing him with drones and noise and traps. He imagined Godzilla panicking. He imagined trees falling, nests breaking, the river turning muddy with chaos. Rio's hands shook, and then he felt a small touch on his ankle. He looked down. Momo was there. How had it gotten back so fast? It stood at Rio's feet, breathing hard. The baby monkey was not with it now. It must have handed it off to the troop, somewhere safe. Momo's eyes were intense, almost human in their urgency. It pointed with its whole body toward the village. Then it pointed toward the men. Then it tapped Rio's shin-like move. Rio understood they needed help. Not just one boy and one monkey. They needed the village, the elders, the people who loved this forest. Rio nodded. "Okay," he whispered. "We tell Grandma." Momo made a short, sharp sound of agreement. Rio and Momo slipped away through the trees, low and fast. Behind them, the men climbed down the hill, talking quickly into radios. "Prepare equipment. Mark the area. Notify headquarters." The words fell like cold rain. Rio ran harder. Branches scratched his arms. His scraped knee burned. But he kept moving. Momo leaped ahead, then circled back, making sure Rio stayed on the right path, like a small guide with a huge mission. When they reached the edge of the village, Rio's lungs felt like fire. Smoke rose from cooking fires. Children played near a well. Dogs slept in shade. Everything looked normal. Rio almost wanted to pretend it was normal too, but then he remembered Godzilla's careful claw lifting the net. He remembered Momo's tiny hand tapping a giant nose. He remembered the hard-voiced man saying, "Worth a lot." Rio pushed through the crowd and ran to his grandma's house. Grandma was outside, sorting beans on a cloth. Her hair was silver, her face lined with sun and laughter and worry. She looked up when Rio burst in, breathless, muddy, eyes wide. "Rio," she said. "What happened?" Rio grabbed her hands. "Grandma," he said, voice shaking, "Godzilla is in the jungle." The beans rolled off the cloth as her hands stilled. Around them, a few neighbors turned their heads. Grandma did not laugh. She did not call him silly. She studied his face, then looked down at Momo, who stood beside Rio like a brave little guard. Grandma's eyes softened, then sharpened. "And the men?" she asked quietly. Rio swallowed. "They're coming. They want to find him." Grandma's jaw tightened. She looked toward the forest, then back at Rio. "Then we move with kindness," she said. "And we move with courage." Momo made a low, determined sound, as if it agreed. Rio felt fear still inside him, but it was no longer lonely. It had friends now, a monkey with a big heart, a grandma with steady hands, and somewhere in the green dark, a giant creature who had chosen gentleness. The jungle wind shifted, carrying the smell of wet leaves and river stones, and Rio knew the next hours would change everything. Soft closing line. And as the sun climbed higher, Rio held hope like a small light in both hands.